My name is James. I'm a Dungeon Master, and yes, I still have a day job. I think there are two reasons more people don't take on the mantle of Dungeon Master and step behind the screen. The first one is being a player is easier. You show up, you roll some dice, you have some action and adventure, you bring some chips, you eat some chips, and then you go home and you are done with. Your responsibilities are over. The second one is confidence. Confidence is something that we want in anything we're going to do, especially if we're going to do it on a stage in front of other people. So we look to other people to instill that confidence in ourselves. We read blogs, Reddit posts, books. We look at YouTube videos at other Dungeon Masters and hope somewhere out there someone has the magic words that will unlock supreme confidence in us. And then we'll be ready to go forth and entertain our families with stories of action, adventure, tragedy, glory, heroism. There are some magic words for that. Try it, fail at it, fix it, and try it again. I think as we get older and older, we enter our teenage years, adults, and then middle ages, the cost of failure becomes higher and higher, so it becomes harder and harder to put ourselves out there and try something that we are not already good at. There's an expectation that if you do something, you are already good at it at this stage in the game. You're a teenager and you have a test on quadratic equations, and if you fail that, you're not going to get into good school. Your future is ruined. You got to go home and face that family with an F on your paper. The cost of failure becomes higher. So we want to already be good at the things that we're going to do. But that's not how we learn how to do anything. It's not how we learn how to do math. That's not how we learn to read. That's not how we learn how to ride a bike or to skateboard. This is a game that we play for the entertainment value of our family and friends and people that we hope will one day be friends. And they are complicit in it. You cannot force them to sit down and play Alice is Missing, Pathfinder, Call of Cthulhu, or Dungeons & Dragons, whatever your game of choice is. They want to be there, otherwise they would not have said yes. Sure, there's some responsibility because they are giving up their time. They're setting aside 2 to 4 hours where they could do something else, but they said yes to this, so they want to give it a try. They have at least some interest in making this a good time. No one shows up saying, I'd really like to spend 4 hours being bored out of my mind. Their enthusiasm will pave over some of the rough patches in your dungeon mastering. When I first decided to be a dungeon master, it was the year 2000. The 3rd edition of Dungeons & Dragons had just come out. Our previous dungeon master from the 2nd edition didn't want to do it anymore. They didn't want to make the switch. They were going away from college or something like that. And I decided it's my time to shine. I will do it better than they ever did. I should have thought differently. Beside the point, I took wholesale the adventure, the storyline from Quest for Glory 4, an old Sierra adventure game. It was fantastic, good choice, great NPCs, great story, lots of monsters. It's kind of an adventure game anyway, so really good, and I botched it because I tried to hew too closely to the story as I had run it through the game. And of course, my players didn't want to do that. They wanted to do their own thing. But it still was fun. They had a lot of fun with it, and they came back the next time, even though it was rough, because I was the first time Dungeon Master. And the second time was better. But I decided that the problem with them doing it the first time and why it didn't go well was because they had too much freedom. And the answer to that was to make NPCs the star of the shows. And then the players who are really interested in hack and slash will just kind of go along with the NPCs and I'll get to the story that I want to do. It's a terrible idea. Don't do that. And yet, they had fun anyway. As a new dungeon master, you will improve in leaps and bounds really fast because there are small things that you can fix and will drastically improve your game. When you're a new dungeon master, let's say that you decide that you're going to put together an encounter with 3 goblins, and then the next room is going to have 3 goblins, and the next room is going to have 3 goblins after that. You go, oh, wait, this is getting kind of boring. They're just doing the same thing over and over again. What if I did 3 goblins, followed by 2 goblins and a warg, and then the last encounter was actually an ogre, and now I've got a boss at the end of the dungeon? Okay, that's improving it. They're getting kind of used to this because this is kind of plain stuff. Let me throw in a trap for a whole different kind of encounter. What if instead of just, the flat cave ground, there was some different elevation, and while they're fighting that one ogre, there are 2 to 3 other goblins with lower hit points, but they're up on a ledge and they're able to fire down with bows. So my wizard has to deal with a different problem because the fighter can't really do that. He didn't pick up a bow, so he's just going to deal with the ogre, while the wizard deals with those goblins at range, and now I have players doing different things. Those small things will drastically improve, and you will get better really fast. I have a friend who recently stepped behind the screens being a Dungeon Master, which is great because now I get to play. And I think that he would admit that when he first started during the first session, he had not yet found his rhythm. So there were some pauses as he went to look up rules, look up how monsters work, remind himself that he did know this system, that he knew how stealth was going to work because we were playing Pathfinder 2. We were giving it a shot. And it was a lot of fun. Yeah, he had not found his rhythm yet. We still had fun with it. And the second session was even better than the first. And the third session was exponentially better than the second or the first session. It's better each and every time that he runs it. He's becoming a really good dungeon master. The framework is there, and he'll get really good at it the more and more he does it, and so will you. If you're at a table with a new dungeon master, take it easy on them. They are making themselves vulnerable. They are opening up their imagination for you to play in. Even if they're using a pre-prepared world like Forgotten Realms, Greyhawk, Birthright, or Golarion, however Pathfinder's world is pronounced, or they're doing their own homebrew world and inviting you into that. This is their version of it. This is their imagination. They are now vulnerable to your comments. So keep that in mind when you are giving them critique. It is fine if you don't like some of the things they did. It is fine if you would have done things differently. It is fine if you want to give them some advice about being a dungeon master. There are some ways to do it that will not cause them to want to never be your dungeon master again. Good critique is given in 3 steps. Give them something they did well. Your encounter design was really good. I really liked that you went ahead and gave us kind of different monsters to interact with. Your story was great. I thought that was really compelling. Whatever it is that they did, open up with that. That builds up some confidence. You get some credit with them when you're going to give them the critique. Pick 1 or 2 things that you didn't like. I felt like things got a little slow once we got into town and we didn't know exactly where it is to go. We had failed a few checks, and then we kind of wandered around until we just kind of listed off the abilities that we could give checks until we finally hit on the right one. I felt like the dungeon ended up being the same thing over and over again in each room, where it was, a 4x4 room by a 4x4 room by a 4x4 room down a straight path. There wasn't really any choices in how we interacted with the dungeon. Give them some ways that they can solve that. I feel like if you had asked us for some sort of check, our characters would have known what to do, even though I didn't know what we were supposed to do. If you had said, hey, your cleric knows some things about religion, and this is a religious object, so why don't you make me a religion check? And that would have led us in there, because I'm not a priest. I'm not a cleric in a world. If you're a counter design, maybe if you had done 4x4 rooms, fine, but if one of them had some elevation, so that when we were fighting the ogre, the goblins could sit up on the ledge and they could shoot down at us. Then we'd have different kind of things to interact with, and we have to make different choices about how we engage in this fight. Do we burn down the ogre? Do we try to take care of the goblins while the ogre is beating the snot out of our fighter? They don't have to agree with what you've said. It's just something to show that you're on their side and you are trying to help them improve. You're not just trying to give them a dump of everything that they did badly. You go, yeah, your storytelling was really good. But your voices stink, your encounters stink, your dungeon design stinks, and your choices were non-existent. You railroaded us. I don't want to be a dungeon master for you. Okay, apparently I'm terrible at this. I'm going to go away now. Why would they want to keep playing with you if you did that to them? Do not just dump on them. Do not compare them to other dungeon masters. Each dungeon master is an individual. You are not like everybody else in your family, your friends, whatever it is. Sure, you have some things that overlap, and you are similar in some ways. But in other ways, you are different. I am not like my first dungeon master. I am not like my friend who is now dungeon mastering for me. They are each different. Do not compare them to the one that you saw on YouTube or the one that ran for you in college. This dungeon master was perfect and did everything the way that I want. They're not that person. They're an individual. Let them be an individual. Let them find their rhythm. And if you don't enjoy it, that's fine. It's okay if eventually there's some parting of the ways, or you play with them and then you dungeon master for them and they get to see something different. And each of you has a different style. That is good. Do not expect them to be perfect out of the gate. We don't do that with anything else. If you saw a kid who's 6 and is learning how to ride a bike for the first time and he falls over the first time he gets on a bike, would you really criticize him for that? I mean, maybe, in which case that's a jerk move, but nobody knows how to ride a bike the first time they get on it. They have to crash a few times and then get on and try it again. This kind of goes for all players, but I think it's especially a problem with dungeon masters that are now players with new dungeon masters. Don't spoil it for them. Don't give away that you're clever and you know the AC of all the monsters by heart, or you know the resistances, or you know their weakness, whatever it is, or that you figured out their dungeons. If they come up against monsters that are hit with sleep darts, do not immediately belt out drow. I did that. I've done that. It's a jerk move. Don't do it. Yeah, sure. All stories follow a certain pattern to them. There are different kinds, but we can figure out what the pattern is, so we can figure out where the plot points are and kind of collect those and move on to the end. Don't spoil it for the new dungeon master. Sit back, try to turn off your dungeon master brain and go, no, I'm just going to enjoy a good time. I'm going to enjoy playing this character with these other characters and getting to kill a monster, and for a little while, not having pressure on me all the time. I hope the story of me failing was entertaining. I think every dungeon master has that kind of story. And if you have it, put in the comments, because I think players that are scared of being a dungeon master are helped best by learning how often everybody else screwed up and yet still tries and does it and still gets better, and how they were able to fix those problems. There are lots of people out there that want to play these role-playing games, and they can't because they can't find a group, or because they don't have the confidence to be a dungeon master themselves, to step behind the screens and say, you know what? I am going to do it. For the good of the mission, I will go. My intro video to my channel says that I started the channel because I had a friend come over and play Dungeons and Dragons, and he wanted to go do it for his daughter. So he asked me to impart the wisdom of being a dungeon master into his head. And that is all true. It's also true that around the same time I was reading a blog post where a person said, me and my 4 friends really want to play Dungeons and Dragons, but we can't find a DM, so we are hiring one. And I don't have a problem with a professional dungeon master. That's fine if you want to do it. I think it's a little weird because, they're a customer. What happens if they do something? What if they make questionable life choices and their character should die? Do you kill them when they're a customer? But it's not the point. Whatever that is. I was reading and I'm going, you and your 4 friends. So there are 5 of you. Means you're the dungeon master. Why don't one of you do it and learn how to be a dungeon master? I'm sure the reason is we don't know how. Well, neither did any of us. I didn't know how to do it. Neither did my original dungeon master. Neither did my friend who's recently picking up. Nobody has any idea how to do it the first time until they go up there and they try it, fail, and iterate on what they've done, and they will get better. That's how you learn. That's how we learn everything. If you like this kind of content, if you like talking about being a dungeon master and what the experience is like, then consider giving it a like and a subscribe. I would appreciate that. Until next time, remember, Dungeon Masters, you are a player too. Try to have some fun.